I stood in the glass-walled conference room, heart hammering so hard I could hear it over the hum of the AC. Mark leaned back in his leather chair, shaking his head with rehearsed disappointment. Unfortunately, Kelsey dropped the ball on the Brightside presentation, he told our VP, his voice heavy with fake regret. Lost us a $250,000 contract. The thing was, I knew exactly when he'd ignored my warning email, the one that predicted his changes would tank everything. I'd sent it 2 nights ago, marked urgent, with every risk spelled out in bold letters. Now he turned to me with that tight smile. Of course, I'll coach her through this, if she's willing to own her mistake. My stomach twisted. The VP's eyes locked on mine, waiting. Mark leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper only I could hear. Take the blame for my mistake or you're done here. In that moment, everything crystallized. I wasn't going down for him. And I knew exactly which email to forward. My name is Kelsey. I'm 29 years old, and up until that morning, I honestly believed hard work mattered. I'd spent 3 years at this marketing firm, pulling late nights, fixing Mark's screw-ups, watching him take credit for my ideas in client meetings. I ignored the red flags, when he called me kiddo in front of executives, when he joked I was his secret weapon but never put my name on anything important. It wasn't just annoying anymore. It was my livelihood. I paid my own rent in a cramped apartment downtown, chipped away at student loans every month, bought groceries on sale. Losing this job wasn't about pride. It was about survival. 3 months ago, I'd pitched a social media strategy that Mark rejected in our team meeting. 2 weeks later, he presented the exact same concept to our biggest client, calling it his breakthrough idea. That campaign landed as Brightside Market. My name appeared nowhere on the win. The quarterly review meeting happened on a Tuesday. Everyone gathered in the main conference room, coffee cups steaming, laptops open. Mark stood at the front, praising different team members by name. He skipped right over me. When I nervously mentioned an ad optimization I'd created that doubled our click-through rates, he laughed. Kelsey's great with the little details, he said, waving his hand dismissively. Then he told a story about how I'd almost sent the wrong file to a client, a twisted version of when I'd actually caught his mistake before it went out. The room laughed awkwardly. My face burned. My eyes stung. I stared at my notebook, pretending to take notes while my vision blurred. After the meeting ended, my coworker Mia leaned over. You know he's doing that on purpose, right? She whispered. I wanted to defend him, to believe there was some explanation. But deep down, I knew she was right. Mia pulled me aside during lunch break, steering me toward a quiet corner of the office cafeteria. She'd worked here 2 years longer than me and knew things I didn't. Mark did the same thing to another woman before you joined, she said, keeping her voice low. Praised her in private meetings, blamed her in public ones. She ended up on a performance plan and left 6 months later. I felt defensive, still wanting to believe Mark was just old school, just under pressure from upper management. He doesn't mean it, I said weakly. He tells me I'm doing great work. Mia gave me a look that said she'd heard this before. Just be careful. Document everything. I brushed off her warning. That afternoon, Mark pulled me into a one-on-one meeting, closing the door behind us. You're my right hand, Kelsey, he said, his tone warm and reassuring. I need you to trust me, okay? We're a team. I nodded, wanting desperately to believe him. I didn't see the trap closing around me. 2 weeks later, corporate announced we'd landed Brightside Market, a massive retail chain with stores across 3 states. This campaign could put our regional office on the national map. Mark called a special meeting, practically bouncing with excitement. I'll be the face of this project, he announced, but Kelsey will be the engine. He handed me a thick folder stuffed with research documents and client notes. You're building the strategy deck. Don't screw this up. For the next 3 weeks, I lived at my desk. I created detailed audience personas, mapped customer journeys, designed ad concepts, built timelines with color-coded milestones. I worked until midnight most nights, subsisting on vending machine snacks and cold coffee. My apartment became just a place to shower and sleep. The night before the pitch, I finally finished. The deck was sharp, comprehensive, backed by solid data. I sent it to Mark at 11:30 p.m. with a subject line he couldn't miss. Brightside pitch, FINAL, please review. That email contained everything Mark needed to know. I outlined my recommended strategy in clear, numbered points. I highlighted the risks of changing certain elements. In bold red text, I wrote, if we remove the in-store integration and retargeting piece, we'll lose the unique angle they loved in the exploratory call. I ended with, please confirm no major changes before the pitch tomorrow. Altering sections X and Y will likely cause negative client reaction. I watched the read receipt ping back within minutes. Mark had opened it, but no response came. Not that night, not the next morning. I arrived at the office at 7 a.m., nerves jangling, hoping to catch him before we left for the pitch. He breezed in at 8:15 with a too bright grin, designer coffee in hand. Morning, kiddo. Ready for the big show? I tried to ask about the deck. He waved me off. Made a few executive tweaks last night. Nothing major. You'll see. My stomach dropped, but there was no time to argue. We had to leave. The Brightside conference room had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown. I sat slightly behind and to the right of Mark, laptop open, ready to pull up additional data if needed. Their marketing team filed in, 5 people, including their VP of brand strategy. Mark launched into his presentation with exaggerated confidence, gesturing broadly at each slide. Then I saw what he'd done. The in-store integration section, gone. The retargeting strategy that tied everything together, deleted. He'd gutted the core elements that made our pitch unique. The client's body language shifted immediately. Arms crossed. Frowns deepened. Glances exchanged across the table. Their VP interrupted midway through. We're confused. This isn't what we discussed in our exploratory call. Where's the in-store engagement piece? Mark's hand tightened on the presentation clicker. He glanced back at me like this was somehow my fault. Streamlined the approach, he stammered. Focused on digital efficiency. The VP's expression hardened. That's not what we need. The meeting ended 20 minutes early. We'll be in touch, they said in the tone everyone recognizes. We'd lost them. Back at our office, the rejection email arrived within 2 hours. Subject line, Brightside Market, decision. I watched Mark read it at his desk, his face going from pale to red. He stormed across the office and slammed his hand on my cubicle wall. What the hell did you do? He hissed, leaning in close. I blinked, genuinely stunned. What I did. I told you not to cut those sections. I sent you an email, he cut me off. Don't you dare try to pin this on me. You built the deck. You're responsible for the content. My hands shook. You changed it. You removed the parts they specifically wanted. His voice dropped to a threatening whisper. Listen carefully. If this escalates, I will not be the one taking the fall. Do you understand me? He straightened up, adjusting his tie. I'm calling a meeting with the VP. We need to get ahead of this. I watched him walk to the communal printer, feeding pages through. My deck, with my name at the bottom. He was building a case against me. The VP's office felt smaller than usual. Mark had gotten there first, setting the stage. When I walked in, he was already mid-sentence, painting his narrative. We had a communication breakdown, he said smoothly. I trusted Kelsey to stick to the approved plan, but she went in a different direction. He slid printed pages across the desk, my email with the deck attached. But something looked wrong. I leaned forward slightly. The warning paragraph was missing. The section where I'd spelled out the risks in bold red text, gone. He'd printed only the parts that made it look like I'd submitted a final deck without reservations. The VP studied the pages, then looked at me. Kelsey, did you deviate from Mark's approved direction? Mark's eyes locked on mine. The message was clear. Fold now, or face consequences. My throat felt tight. Every instinct screamed to just apologize, minimize myself, make this go away. But I thought about my rent, my loans, 3 years of work, and how he was rewriting history right in front of me. I forced myself to speak calmly. I followed the strategy I originally proposed. The version presented to Brightside was altered after I submitted it. Mark gave a little laugh, perfectly calibrated to sound patient but concerned. She's still new to handling accounts this size. She's being defensive because she's embarrassed. He looked at me with warning in his eyes. The VP shifted in his chair, clearly uncomfortable. We'll revisit this on Monday. Everyone needs to cool off over the weekend. As we filed out, Mark stepped close in the hallway. His voice was barely audible. You just made a big mistake. Now I have to protect myself, and I will bury you to do it. I walked to my desk on shaking legs, sat down, and stared at my computer screen without seeing it. My coworker across the partition pretended not to have heard anything, but I saw her nervous glance. That weekend felt endless. I barely slept. But by Sunday night, something had shifted inside me. I wasn't going down without a fight. Monday morning, a calendar invite appeared. 1. Performance concerns. My stomach dropped when I saw the guest list: Mark, me, and someone from HR. I walked into the small conference room to find him already seated. The HR representative, a woman named Patricia, gave me a neutral smile. Mark slid a printed document across the table. Performance Improvement Plan, read the header in bold. I scanned the bullet points. Failed to follow direction on major client presentation. Misrepresented strategy to client. Demonstrated inability to accept coaching. At the bottom was a signature line: I acknowledge these performance issues and commit to improving. My hands felt cold. This was it. Sign this, and I'd be admitting to mistakes I didn't make, giving them documentation to fire me later. Refuse, and I'd be out immediately. Mark's voice was soft, almost kind. Sign this, and we'll move forward. We all make mistakes. But if you refuse, I can't guarantee your role here. I looked at the paper, then at him. I'd like to review this carefully before I sign anything, I said quietly. *12. I left work early, claiming a headache. Really, I was shaken but focused. At home, I opened my laptop and started digging. I found the email in my sent folder, the full version, including the bolded warning Mark had conveniently deleted from his printed copy. I forwarded it to my personal email address. Then I kept searching. Calendar invites showing Mark had taken over client meetings I'd originally scheduled. Slack messages where he admitted cutting my sections. Removed your in-store piece. It was cluttering the deck. Read one message from the night before the pitch. Performance reports with my name on detailed analysis that Mark had presented as his own work. I started a timeline document, listing what happened and when, with evidence for each point. My phone buzzed with a Slack notification. Mark, HR is expecting your signed PIP by end of day tomorrow. Don't drag this out. I stared at the message. Then I typed, I'll have a response tomorrow. I didn't say what kind of response. Over the next week, instead of refusing outright, I played along. I attended Mark's coaching sessions, where he lectured me about ownership and not being emotional. I took detailed notes in a notebook, nodding and asking clarifying questions. After each session, I sent him follow-up emails. Per our discussion today, you stated that you decided to remove the in-store integration because it seemed too complex for the initial pitch. You also mentioned that you made this decision the night before the presentation. He'd reply carelessly, not realizing he was confirming key details in writing. Right, we needed to streamline. Executive decision. Each email became another piece of documentation, a pattern of him admitting his changes and decisions. During one session, he leaned back and said something revealing. Look, the bright side loss can't be pinned on me. I've got a reputation to protect. He glanced toward the glass wall, suddenly aware someone might have heard. But the damage was done. I'd heard it clearly, and so had anyone passing by. I started noticing others Mark had burned. A junior designer named Tyler whose logo concept appeared in a company-wide email with Mark's name as creator. A copywriter named Brianna who got blamed for a typo that Mark had introduced during last-minute edits. One afternoon, I approached Tyler quietly. Did you keep any emails? Any proof that was your concept? His eyes widened. Yeah, actually. I sent it to Mark weeks before that email went out. Brianna had screenshots too, tracked changes showing exactly when Mark had altered her copy. Alone, these were small incidents. Together, they showed a pattern. Meanwhile, Mark became increasingly frantic and micromanaging. He sent me petty corrective emails, CCing HR to build his case. Kelsey, I noticed you were 3 minutes late this morning. Punctuality is important. Kelsey, your font choice in this internal memo wasn't consistent with brand guidelines. Each email more ridiculous than the last. One afternoon, Mia rushed over, glancing around nervously. You need to see what Mark just left on the printer, she whispered urgently. At the communal printer lay several pages Mark had clearly meant to grab but forgotten in his rush to a meeting. I recognized the company letterhead immediately. It was a draft memo to the VP, labeled Kelsey Peterson, Performance Documentation. My hands trembled as I read, resistant to feedback, emotionally volatile, and poses a risk to major accounts. Recommend immediate termination if PIP is not signed by end of week. Notes were scribbled in the margins in Mark's handwriting. Need HR sign off to terminate, and protect my record with Brightside, cannot have my decisions questioned. My breath caught. This confirmed everything. He wasn't just trying to scapegoat me for one mistake. He was actively working to push me out before I could defend myself. I pulled out my phone and quickly photographed each page, making Sure, the text was clear. Then I carefully put the pages back exactly as I'd found them. That evening, a company-wide email announced that a senior VP from headquarters would be visiting to review regional leadership and major account handling. The timing felt significant. Her name was Dana, Senior VP of Operations, according to the org chart. She arrived on a Wednesday, carrying an iPad and an air of someone who didn't miss details. She scheduled one-on-one meetings with key staff members, including Mark and me. My meeting was Thursday afternoon. Dana's temporary office was spare and professional. She gestured to a chair across from her desk and smiled. "Thanks for making time, Kelsey. How are you feeling about your development here? How are major accounts typically handled?" I chose my words carefully. I didn't rant or complain. I kept my voice steady. "I've noticed a pattern where some work and decisions aren't accurately attributed. I have documentation if that would be helpful." Her eyebrow raised slightly. "Documentation?" I nodded. "Emails, project files, things like that. I can provide them if needed." She studied me for a long moment, as if recalculating something. "That would be..." Her assistant knocked on the door. "Dana, your call about the Brightside account is starting in 5 minutes. She nodded. "We'll continue this conversation," she told me. I left her office with my heart racing and a decision crystallizing in my mind. I sat at my desk, staring at my computer screen. My sent folder was open. There it was, Brightside Pitch, FINAL, please review. The email where I'd clearly warned Mark not to cut the critical components. The email he'd cherry-picked when printing for the VP. My cursor hovered over the forward button. One click. That's all it would take. I thought about the PIP sitting unsigned on my desk. I thought about Mark's memo planning my termination. I thought about 3 years of late nights and stolen credit. I clicked forward. In the To field, I typed Dana's email address. I kept the message short and professional. "Hi Dana, per our conversation, here is one example of documented communication showing my original recommendations versus what was actually presented to the client. Happy to provide additional context if needed. Kelsey, no CC to Mark. No emotional language, just facts." I hit send. Through the glass walls, I could see Dana settling into the conference room with Mark. They were starting the Brightside post-mortem discussion. My email was about to land in her inbox. I watched through the glass partition, unable to look away. Mark sat across from Dana, gesturing animatedly as he explained the Brightside situation. He leaned back confidently, clearly thinking he was winning her over with his version of events. Mid-sentence, Dana's phone lit up on the table. She glanced down, tapped the screen, and her expression changed. Subtle, but I caught it. Her eyes narrowed slightly as she scrolled. She was reading my email. Reading the bolded warning Mark had ignored. Reading proof that everything he'd just told her was incomplete at best. She looked up at him with new eyes. "Mark, can you walk me through who decided to remove the in-store and retargeting elements?" Her voice was calm but sharp. He hesitated, sensing something had shifted. "Well, we collectively felt it was too complex collectively." She interrupted. "That's interesting, because that's not consistent with the documentation I'm looking at." Mark's face flushed. His confident posture crumbled. He stammered something about executive decisions and streamlining, but Dana's expression remained neutral and unmoved. The meeting ended abruptly. Mark stood, smoothing his tie nervously, and left the conference room. His eyes found mine. Across the office, and I saw genuine fear there for the first time. Mark burst into my cubicle area minutes later, his face red and jaw tight. "What did you send her?" he hissed, leaning over my desk. I kept my voice level and professional. "I sent her the original Brightside email with my recommendations. The one you received before the pitch. You went over my head. That's insubordination." I met his eyes. "She asked for documentation. I provided it. That's not insubordination, it's transparency." He stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. Not as the quiet assistant who fixed his mistakes and absorbed his blame, but as someone who could fight back. "You have no idea what you've done," he said quietly. But his voice wavered. The power dynamic had shifted, and we both knew it. He walked away without another word. 2 hours later, another calendar invite appeared. Meeting, Kelsey, Mark, HR, Dana. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. I screenshot the invite and saved it to my personal email. Then I went home and prepared for whatever came next. I'd crossed the point of no return, and there was no going back. I walked into the conference room the next morning expecting to be fired. Instead, Dana sat at the head of the table with a folder open in front of her. Patricia from HR sat to her left, expression guarded. Mark sat across from me, fingers tapping nervously on his pen. Dana started without preamble. There seems to be a significant discrepancy between what was represented about the Brightside account and the documented communication. She laid out printed copies of my email, the full version with the bolded warnings. Then Mark's Slack messages admitting he'd cut my sections. Then the performance improvement plan he'd drafted. I've reviewed all of this carefully, Dana continued. And I've also reached out to a few other team members to understand the broader working environment here. Mark's head snapped up. You did what? Dana's expression remained neutral. Due diligence. She pulled out another set of pages, screenshots and statements from Tyler, Brianna, and others. There appears to be a pattern, she said calmly. My heart pounded. This was actually happening. Someone was finally seeing the truth. Dana read excerpts from the other employees' statements, anonymized but clear. Tyler's logo concept was stolen. Brianna's work was blamed for Mark's errors. The woman who'd left before me, whose experience mirrored mine almost exactly. HR shifted uncomfortably in their seat, clearly realizing how much they'd missed or ignored. Mark tried to interrupt. This is being twisted. These are misunderstandings, Mark. Dana's voice cut through his protest. The documentation suggests otherwise. This is systemic, not isolated. She turned to me. Kelsey, is there anything else you'd like to add before we move forward with next steps? My mind spun with everything I could say. Every snide comment, every time he'd taken credit, every late-night text demanding I fix his mistakes. But I took a slow breath and kept focused. I don't want to waste anyone's time, I said. I love the work I do here. I just don't want my name attached to someone else's decisions and then used as a scapegoat when those decisions fail. I admitted I'd been scared to speak up earlier, that I'd doubted myself and wondered if I was overreacting. Dana nodded, and I saw something like respect in her expression. Dana dismissed me from the room but asked Mark to stay. As I stood to leave, I heard her say, Mark, we need to discuss these allegations in detail. I'll need you to walk me through several specific incidents. I walked back to my desk in a daze. Around me, the office buzzed with normal activity, phones ringing, keyboards clicking, the coffee machine gurgling. But everything felt different now. Over the next week, the atmosphere grew tense and strange. Mark's office door stayed closed most days. He had multiple long meetings with HR and Dana. His calendar disappeared from our shared system. Then, one Monday morning, we all received a mandatory meeting invite for 2 p.m. The entire team crowded into the main conference room. Dana stood at the front, her expression professional but firm. I want to address some recent changes, she began. Effective immediately, Mark is no longer with the company. We take integrity and fair attribution of work very seriously here. She didn't elaborate, but her eyes briefly met mine across the room. We'll be implementing new protocols for project documentation and team leadership accountability. After the meeting, my direct VP pulled me aside. There's something we'd like to discuss with you, Kelsey. Do you have time now? In a smaller office, Dana and my VP sat across from me. Dana spoke first. We want to offer you a new position. Lead strategist for key accounts. My breath caught. It wasn't Mark's exact role, but it was a significant step up, more responsibility, more autonomy, better pay. Real recognition. Your documentation, your composure under pressure, and your work quality haven't gone unnoticed, Dana continued. I asked for time to think, not because I was unsure about accepting, but because I wanted to set clear terms. 24 hours later, I returned with my requests in writing. A clear title with defined responsibilities, my name on all client communications I led, and explicit boundaries around work hours and attribution. No more informal promises without paper trails. They agreed to everything. That evening, as I packed up my desk to move to a new workspace, I saw Mark one final time. He was at reception with a cardboard box, security quietly escorting him toward the exit. Our eyes met briefly across the distance. There was no satisfaction in watching him leave, just a quiet sense of closure. He'd built his career on taking credit and shifting blame. His own habits had finally caught up with him. I moved into my new office the following Monday. It was modest, just a desk, a chair, a window overlooking the parking lot, but it had my name on the doorplate. I sent an email to my team that afternoon. Moving forward, I want to make sure everyone here gets proper recognition for their work, and that no one feels afraid to speak up when something doesn't seem right. Responses trickled in throughout the day. Tyler, thank you for this. Brianna, looking forward to working with you in this new role. Mia, you deserve this. The transition wasn't seamless. There were awkward moments when people didn't know how to act around me, or when I had to navigate relationships that Mark's presence had complicated. But slowly, things normalized. 3 months later, I led my first major pitch to a potential client. My VP introduced me to their team. Kelsey is the one who built this strategy from the ground up. She'll walk you through our approach. Hearing those words, my name, my work, properly attributed, felt better than I'd imagined. We won the account. This time, my name was on the contract. 6 months into my new role, I attended a company leadership retreat. During a workshop on team management, the facilitator asked us to share a professional lesson we'd learned the hard way. I thought about that day in the conference room with Mark whispering his ultimatum. I thought about the moment I'd hovered over the send button, knowing that forwarding one email could change everything. I learned that you don't have to be the loudest or the meanest to win, I said. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is document the truth. Stay calm under pressure, and refuse to carry someone else's mistakes. The room was quiet. Other managers nodded. After the session, a younger team member approached me. I'm dealing with something similar with my supervisor, she said quietly. I don't know what to do. I gave her the advice I wish someone had given me sooner: document everything. Trust your instincts. And never let anyone convince you that you have to sacrifice your integrity to keep your job. Later, as I drove home through evening traffic, I thought about my father. He'd passed away when I was in college, but I remembered something he used to say: the truth is like a rock in a river. The current might hide it for a while, but eventually, the water clears. Mark had tried to bury the truth under layers of manipulation and fear. But truth has weight. It doesn't wash away. Sometimes it just takes one person brave enough to stop pretending they can't see the rock sitting there in plain sight. I didn't destroy Mark's career. He did that himself, one stolen idea and shifted blame at a time. I just stopped being part of his cover story. And in the end, that made all the difference.